Hi, guys, and welcome to this episode of the Second Account podcast. My name is Paul, your host, and I'm joined with Mark, who is going to introduce himself now.
So hi guys, I'm Mark Clayton. I am a HEMS doctor, intensive care specialist. I've also got loads of other volunteer and paid roles, but probably the HEMS stuff is the bit that's most interesting to people.
Perfect. So, going from the start, what got you into HEMS and being a doctor?
Probably something that I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. So way back, probably even to being a child at school. My local St John guys brought an ambulance to our school fete, and I was enraptured by the idea of doing that sort of thing for a living. And that pushed me down the pathway of going into medicine. And then, when you're a doctor, you sort of see the HEMS guys as being the pinnacle of acute medical careers. And I've been very fortunate that the career path that I've taken has led me to reach the heady heights of HEMS.
I think it's very similar to my experience because obviously I'm with St John, worked my way up to ambulance crew, and then went to uni to
Yeah,
become a paramedic, and I'm qualifying in 5 months' time. And
amazing.
as paramedics, we look at HEMS as like the gods, the pinnacle. So they are just like what you aspire to be. So it's lovely to have you on. Um, so what does a
That's
typical
great to
day
hear.
look like as a HEMS doctor? So obviously you don't work full time as HEMS. You're obviously in hospital as well.
No,
So
it's not anymore. So I first started in HEMS 2020, and there was that sort of slightly small thing that people might have heard of, might have not. COVID that made a big
uh,
change to the way we managed ourselves. So I did a full time fellowship for a whole year where I did nothing but HEMS. It was slightly different at the start because of the COVID stuff, but it rapidly became sort of business as usual once things opened up again. I now work 2 shifts a month, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, depending on my other work schedule. But a typical day in HEMS always starts with crew brief and our daily checks, and that's about getting us online as quickly as possible but as safely as possible. So, we carry an awful lot of kit on both the helicopter and the cars, and the stuff is duplicated. What we want to do is make sure that what we're doing is taking out things that are serviceable, drugs that are in date. Monitors that have got batteries in, because these things are easy to forget if you're not looking. So we start our shift. The paramedic and I will go and we'll do pre-shift checks on the car and then on the helicopter as well. Once that stuff's done and we're happy that we are good to go by car, we'll book online and we'll then have an aviation brief with the pilots. Those guys will tell us what sort of things we should be looking out for during the day, what the weather's going to be like. Should we pack our big coats? Is it going to cause us problems in terms of getting to jobs? And that's much more of an issue at night. So we fly at night at my HEM service, and the weather has a huge impact on whether we are or aren't going to be flying at night just because of the limits. Once the brief is done, if it's a daytime shift, we'll generally have a crew breakfast. So we'll all sit down together, chat through stuff, some good bands, some good food. Most Thames pilots seem to be amazing at breakfast. They bring in the good stuff and we all eat really well. And then what happens next really depends on what the lie of the land is out in ambulance world. Obviously, we are dispatched by the ambulance service. We don't self-dispatch in my service. So if the phone rings, it's coming from a dispatcher at the control room. If we get out for a job, great. We'll go out for a job. We'll do our stuff. Typical HEMS tasking probably takes between an hour and 2 hours, depending on where we fly the patient, what interventions we make. We'll then get back to base. We'll go through the kit, make sure we restock everything that we've used, go through the paperwork, and then we'll have a rapid debrief as a team. Always looking to learn from what we've done, and we're always looking to sort of improve so that the next time we meet this, that we are that little bit better so that our patients get the best quality care. If there isn't a job, then we will go through daily checks. So again, we carry so much kit, all of it is checked. Mostly it's checked on a monthly basis, and the duty crew are the guys that are doing those checks alongside our ops team. So we've got a system that allows us to know what we're supposed to be checking that day. So it might be that we're going to check all of the controlled drugs in the cupboard to make sure that nothing's out of date, that we've got enough stock to live with. Or we'll do, a check of every monitor that we own. So log it stripped down, cleaned, all the functions work, make sure all the silly things like the ECG dots are in date, that the batteries are all in date, that the servicing stuff's in date, so that we are assured that every time we open a bag, the stuff that's supposed to be there is there and it's in a functional, serviceable state.
good, good. So, you obviously started out as a doctor. Was HEMS your end goal, or was it just something you fell into?
No, so I've always been a pre-hospital bod. With St John's stuff, obviously, I've been doing event medicine for a very long time. At an intermediate level, and then I qualified as a doctor. I'd worked as a medical student with a number of anaesthetists, and I thought, actually, these guys are the guys I want to be when I grow up. Everyone seemed super happy at a crisis to see the anaesthetist turn up. They were always really calm, collected, and just delivered amazing care. But quite a short attention span, so I like doing stuff and seeing an immediate result. So for me, hospital-based medicine where you give a drug, come back in 6 months' time and see the impact, it wasn't the way I was going to go in my career. So anaesthesia was the way forward. And I think again, in the UK, anaesthesia, intensive care, EM, they are closely aligned, and they are the feeder specialties for pre-hospital emergency medicine in the UK. Knowing that I was going down the pathway of anaesthesia, I started speaking to people that were doing HEMS and started questioning, what is it that I need to do what you do? And certainly as time has progressed, I think pre-hospital medicine in the UK has become much more professional in the way it's done. So it used to be very much a field of amateurs. A lot of the original HEMS doctors, no, amateurs is the wrong word, volunteers who were not doing it full time. Whereas now things are much more professional. You've got a clear training pathway with clear goals, and you've got a CCT in FEM if that's where you're going to go as a consultant. So yeah, working with these people, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do high level pre-hospital medicine, and really for me it was going to be the military or it was going to be helicopters, and I went down the pathway of helicopters.
So when you joined HEMS, was there any other extra training you had to do as a doctor, or any sort of upskilling that you had to take part of?
Yeah, so I think most people who are working in an acute specialty and have got some pre-hospital experience would probably get on reasonably well with the medicine in HEMS. A lot of the time, we are not doing Gucci interventions that require super high level training. It's not that frequently that we're opening chests at the roadside. It's not that frequently that we're lopping off limbs. A lot of what we do is decision making, and being a senior doctor, you will have built that decision making skill up throughout your sort of time up to that point. I came into it having been a basics doctor for a good 10 years beforehand, so the pre-hospital environment wasn't new to me. Working with ambulance crews at 3 in the morning in the dark wasn't new to me. So when I started, actually, it was not about the medicine at all. It was about that working in those high level teams, so working one on one with a CCP who knows my job probably better than I do and could probably do my job without me if there weren't some legal things that are around controlled drugs. The aviation stuff was a big steep learning curve. So before starting in HEMS, I'd done one or two helicopter transfers as part of my anaesthetic career, but I'd never done any formal HEMS stuff before then. So learning to work around the helicopter, learning to work in that enclosed environment, working with the aviation guys as a medical passenger. So we did some training on that, which was useful. We did loads and loads of training on crew resource management and the sort of the softer non-technical skills that actually can make or break a HEMS mission. And that's about arriving on scene and integrating into a team that's already there. And I was told very early on, I think it's a really good piece of advice, is that when I turn up in an orange suit on a yellow helicopter, I'm coming into someone's office. They're already there. They've already started the job. I am there to help and to add a cherry on top, really. I'm not there to take over. And that was a really sage piece of advice that I've stuck with me all the way through.
No, no, good. So you mentioned intervention in the helicopter just then. What kind of interventions are you doing in the back of the helicopter? Because I'm assuming it's quite a small environment. So
Yeah, so we're flying a 145 D3, which is it's a nice platform. It's a really stable platform. It's not the biggest aircraft that's been used in HEMS in the UK, and it's certainly not the smallest. But most people who are used to working in the back of an ambulance will be surprised at just how snug it can be in the back of our aircraft. We will try not to do things in flight if we can avoid it. Um, for safety reasons, we're not really supposed to be unstrapped if we can help it. If we are unstrapped, we need to let the pilots know. So we're not moving around the back of the aircraft. Our access to the patient isn't as good as it would be in the back of an ambulance, for example. On our aircraft, the patient is lying with their right hand side against the bulkhead. Their legs go down into the bottom of the aircraft, so I can't really get to anything below the waist. The left hand side is relatively accessible. The head is relatively accessible. But what we don't want to be doing is doing RSIs in the back of a helicopter. We don't want to be putting chest drains in the back of a helicopter. Even things like recannulation in the back of a helicopter are quite challenging. So generally speaking, we limit what we do and we plan ahead. If you think you might need to do it in flight, then you do it on the ground beforehand, or you don't fly. And there definitely have been patients where flying might have been quicker. It might have been the better way in terms of speed to get the patient to where they need to be. But the risks involved in flying that unstable patient mean that we'll go by road instead. You can always pull over and stop in the back of an ambulance. It's not quite so straightforward when you're at 1,200 feet.
So you're not really doing much in the back. You're pretty much
Yeah, I think
looking for the
what
state in the back.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the physical interventions, to say we're not doing a lot, we're not doing big stuff because we've planned ahead and we've done it already. So if you think the patient's going to need to go to sleep in flight, well, you put them to sleep before you fly. There's no reason why you should be doing that at the back of the aircraft unless there's an emergency and it's come out of the blue. We'll do stuff like we'll hang blood, we'll change infusions, we'll start infusions. Obviously, we're monitoring the patient continually in flight. I'll alter ventilation settings if I need to. But what I'm not planning to do is to do a full RSI in the back of the helicopter. It is technically possible. It's undesirable, I think is fair to say.
That makes a lot of sense, obviously, because there's not enough room to be doing that. So, obviously, you're London HEMS. I'm assuming it's London
No.
based.
So I'm East Anglia now, ambulance, so EAAA.
Oh, okay. So, what kind of jobs do you normally go to or see in that district?
So it varies from the time of year and really from which base you're flying out of. So we have two bases. We've got a base at Cambridge City Airport and we've got a base at Norwich Airport. And they're 40 or 50 miles apart. I think when you're flying out of Norwich, because it's a much more rural area and it's also got the entirety of the Norfolk and Suffolk coastline, you go out to cardiac arrests, drownings. We've got the Norfolk Broads, so you get boat-related accidents relatively commonly in the summer. We've got a whole load of fairly rubbish roads, so you get high-speed RTCs involving farm machinery, motorcycles. When you fly out of Cambridge, it's got access to much faster roads. So you've got the A1, you've got the M1, you've got all the roads that lead down into London. There's much bigger population centres around there as well. So we fly down a lot into Luton, we fly west out into Bedfordshire. Um, so the character of the jobs is slightly different. We see a lot more sort of high speed RTC trauma when you're working in Cambridge. Norfolk, you will often see a lot of cardiac arrests, especially as we go into the autumn and the winter, and that sort of some population goes back to where they've come from. Then you're left with people that are relatively elderly. Certainly up in North Norfolk, there's a relatively elderly population up there. They are far away from hospitals, so a HEMS aircraft actually is quite useful for getting to those guys. So yeah, that's the sort of thing we're going to. Cardiac arrest we go to a lot. Major trauma we go to a lot. We go to support crews with stuff that's perhaps slightly different, stuff that people don't see regularly. So obstetric stuff we go to relatively regularly, and paediatrics we'll go to support crews because most crews don't see a lot of peds, whereas we do.
So you mentioned a lot there about going to cardiac arrests. Obviously, as a student myself, I've gone to a lot of cardiac arrests. I've dealt with them as a para crew and gone to hospital. What um, allows you to go? Why would you be sent to a cardiac arrest as a HEMS doctor? Why would they request HEMS in your trust?
Yeah, so within our area, we'll tend to go to workable cardiac arrest. So those where you feel like there's likely to be a positive outcome if you can get all the ducks in a row. And when you think about that chain of survival, we are sort of that enhanced level care. So we can start the intensive care stuff happening on scene. So you don't need to wait to get to the hospital to have your ultrasound scan, for example. We can do that at the roadside or in the bedroom or in the pub or wherever you have your cardiac arrest, we can do those things. My local ambulance service trust don't do intubation at standard road paramedic level. Some of the paramedic managers can, but actually we'll come along and we can deliver difficult airway management, so intubation and then positive pressure ventilation. We carry a Lucas, as did the managers on the road. We have the ability, and we frequently will now put in arterial lines, almost routinely, in fact, to allow us to focus our efforts when it comes to the CPR. So making sure that the CPR is done properly and well. We put in central lines so we can run infusions. We are taking part in a big trial about placement of intra-aortic balloons during cardiac arrest. So the ERICA arrest trial is ongoing for us. So we come along and we add sort of a different level of intervention. So ALS and then the cherry on top stuff really to make sure that the patients do get that high level stuff that they actually might need. So again, we'll do blood gases quite comfortably. We fly with a gas analyzer. You can do a blood gas on your living room floor. We'll bang those lines in, and we also come with a significant body of experience. So a lot of our doctors are very senior doctors in their field. We've all seen loads and loads of cardiac arrests. We've got some pharmacology that's not standard on road vehicles, so we've got things like magnesium and lidocaine. Um, we've got adrenaline infusions as an option. So we come with the sort of the stuff you might expect to deliver in the A&E department or the intensive care unit, and we can do it there and then. So we deliver a lot, I think, when you get return of circulation, but actually we also deliver a lot for those patients before you get to that point.
Definitely, that's really really interesting. Um, so as a HEMS doctor, you've been on the in the air and on road for quite a long time now. Is there any jobs that you look back on and think, wow, that was different or interesting, or you've learned from that you want to share?
Um, yeah, I mean, as I say, I've been doing pre-hospital emergency medicine for a very, very long time, and I've been to some really very strange and very interesting places in my time. Where I live up in North Lincolnshire, we've got a load of industrial sites. We've got a huge great steelworks that's not far from here. So I've been to a number of jobs in the steelworks. What people don't often consider when you go to these industrial sites is actually you're often working at height. And I went to a job a long time ago now where a couple of guys were trapped in a great big concrete hopper that was filled with limestone, crushed limestone, and there'd been a shift in stuff, and they'd all got themselves trapped at the bottom of it. What you thought was at ground level, which is where they were, actually we ended up being 5 stories in the air, and then in order to work with the USAR guys who rappelled down and got these guys up to then deliver the care on a catwalk, and then somehow get them 5 stories back down to the ground, to then get them off site to the hospital. And that was one of those was head scratching jobs where Hart were there and HEMS were there and I was there as a basics doctor and we had the whole of Humberside Fire and Rescue were there. It was yeah, it was a really interesting job. But I'd never considered when you think steelworks, you don't think huge, great tall buildings where I'm really working at height because that's just not the sort of thing I considered at all.
As well as when you say steelworks, you automatically assume there's going to be major trauma or some sort of impalement with steelworks, but obviously that was more, was it crush injuries more that you dealt with on that day,
Yeah,
or?
I think so. Yeah, what they've been doing is they've been chipping off stuff from the side of the hopper. So this hopper was being decommissioned, but it's a great big concrete thing. I say enormous, absolutely enormous. And stuff had then shifted. So they were then trapped up to their waist in what essentially was just crushed limestone dust. But they were at the bottom of this hole and we were at the top of this hole. They were a long way down from us. They had rappelled down to start with, so there were no ladders, no stairs. Getting down there was a challenge for the fire service, and I had to train the fire service in how to use Penthrox so that they could give the patients pain relief while they were down there. Yeah, it was an interesting head scratcher of a job. And we were there long enough that Hart could get there. So mostly where I live, Hart don't get to the jobs before we leave because they're 90 minutes away by road. The fact that they got there suggests that we were there quite some time.
It sounds it sounds like a really mad, interesting job. So you mentioned before you do quite a lot of volunteering as well with St John.
I do,
How
yeah, yeah.
you've done that for a while, you said. So how do you find the shift from helicopter HEMS work to St John events?
So they are two sides of the same coin, aren't they? They're both pre-hospital medicine in their own way. Event medicine is, I think, quite different to HEMS work. I'm sure you know there's a lot of sitting around when you're on events, but I
I've
often find
experienced.
that because I've got red on my shoulder and doctor on my chest, people lay first aiders will come and chat, and they'll chat about jobs they've had. They'll chat about all sorts of stuff, career pathways. I find it really, really nice actually to be able to chat about the stuff that I do. I'm very lucky that I'm where I am, and St John is a massive part of that. But you are right; it's quite different from flying out to someone who's got their arm trapped in a baling machine, doling out paracetamol, or suturing a wound in a head is quite different at an event. I have to say though, my experience of working under pressure as a HEMS doctor means that I'm really comfortable managing risk and managing flow. The one that I always think about as sort of a good example of that is the Great North Run. I generally end up in the secondary finish area where we'll treat about 130 patients over the course of the day. It's usually over about the course of about 3 hours. And I don't tend to touch very many patients. I do a lot of management and I'll go around making sure that everyone is comfortable, that we've got a clear plan for people. And I think having been a HEMS doctor and being in a position where I can manage a big team at a big incident, it stands me in really good stead. I'm very comfortable making those decisions and dealing with people now. But yeah, I love event medicine. I've been in St John for 31 years, so a little while.
Yes, I think I've what joined when I was 18. I'm 27 now, so I've been in a fair while, but not as long as you. And I think it is. It's one of them
I
things.
was 10, I was 10 when I joined St John.
Oh, I was 18. Yeah. I think it's one of them things you start and then you just fall in love with it. Whatever you are in the country, I think St John is. If you want to get into medicine or anything of the sort, it is a good base because it does teach you
Yeah,
pretty
I
much
think
theory.
uniformed volunteering in general is a force for good. I think St John, in particular, if you're interested in medical careers, it's definitely something that people should look at. I always recommend those that are thinking about applying for medicine to look at joining St John. It demonstrates that you can commit to something long term. It's really good for meeting people who aren't necessarily in your standard peer group. St John is a broad church. We've got people from all sorts of walks of life, um, all of whom are generally really friendly and willing to chat about themselves and to give you that slightly different perspective. I think I say a real force for good.
It's one of it's like working with professionals like yourself as well. Like I joined at 18, didn't know anything, and I was working with doctors, paramedics, nurses, and it was cemented in my brain. Okay, this is what I want to do, and they put me on the right path to get to that. And here I am now.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'd be a HEMS doctor if I weren't a St John volunteer for as long as I have been, because HEMS charities are charities fundamentally, and it's all really very tempting to look at the big noisy helicopter and the guys in orange and red and think that's everything, but actually it's not at all. All of that happens because of the huge background infrastructure with the volunteers and those that are fundraising and the employees that are keeping these things ticking over. And having come from, St John is what is the largest first aid charity in the UK, right? Having come from that and been a small part of that, I understand far more about where I fit into the HEMS team. And I think when you go to interview for a HEMS job, knowing that stands you in really good stead. It probably puts you at a slight advantage to those that have never done anything with a charity. It also makes you understand that the work we do is funded in a very special way. And it also means that you're more likely to understand that you don't waste stuff because that money is hard come by. You don't waste kit because it's expensive and that has to be paid for somehow. And charities don't have infinite pots of money. We're not funded by the government. That money comes from somewhere and it comes from supporters and dedicated individuals that are giving up their time. So, even a cannula is precious. You don't chuck it away if you don't need to.
Definitely, definitely. So you mentioned before, obviously you fly as a HEMS doctor, but you're also on the road. Is there a reason why you would swap from the helicopters to the car?
Yeah, so with EAAA, obviously we run two bases. We run two helicopters. We run one 24/7. So the Norwich aircraft runs day and night throughout the year. The Cambridge aircraft at the moment only runs 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. and then we switch to the car from Cambridge at night. But at any time really, if we're on shift by air, if the weather conditions aren't right, and there are certain legal requirements for a certain night. For example, we need 1,200 feet of flight space, and the cloud needs to be at a certain level. The visibility needs to be at a certain level, and if we can't guarantee that throughout all phases of flight, so it might be brilliant at Norwich when you lift, but if you're flying to Great Yarmouth and they're shrouded in fog, you won't be able to land. So there's no point wasting your time flying there, turning around, landing on at Norwich Airport again, and then getting back in the car and driving there. So for those jobs, the pilots will tell us, look, it's not doable. You might as well go by road. Um, if the weather craps out on us while we're in flight, we might just turn tail and come back to base, get in the car. Um, Sometimes the aircraft isn't in a position to fly, so there are certain things about our aircraft that mean the temperature needs to be a certain level. We can't have visible moisture below 5 degrees. So there are lots of things. Mostly it's weather related. Sometimes it's because the aircraft needs some maintenance to be done. Or the pilots tell us actually there's no way to get you into that site. You might as well just drive. And by night, for us, realistically, if we can drive there within 45 minutes of the call, we'll just drive there because it takes time to plan a night mission, to get into the aircraft, leave, fly to the scene, land on, and then inevitably at night, it's the landing sites are a longer distance from the jobs just because you need a much bigger area to land at night. By that point, you might as well just have driven there. Usually, if someone's going to pick you up from a landing site, well, you might as well just drive there. So we always talk together as a crew. We have this mantra that it's 4 or 5 to go and it's one to say no. So if someone isn't happy, then we don't fly. We'll drive. We'll always get there somehow. And we're quite lucky in HEMS that we're not search and rescue. We are not the only thing going. That usually an ambulance will get there. So we are going to back them up. What we don't want to do is to take unnecessary risks with the aircraft and the crew that it contains in order to get there. So we can drive.
So in the car, is it the same? same exact kit in the car as in the helicopter, or do you leave anything
Yeah,
behind?
we carry everything in the aircraft is the same as in the back of the car. What we can't do is transport a patient in the car. Clearly, we offload stuff from the vehicle into the ambulance. But otherwise, we are mirrored in terms of the kit we carry. So same ventilator, same monitor, same blood, plasma, same surgical kit, same pediatric bags. All of the kit is exactly the same. It's just shoved in the boot of a Volvo rather than in the boot of a 145.
Different price range as well than the Volvo.
Yeah, significantly different price range. Yeah.
Fair enough. So we're coming to the end now. One last question. What advice would you give to anyone looking at getting into being a doctor, being in HEMS? Where would you say start? Where was the best place to start?
So starting early is the key. Starting early because all the stuff you need to gather along the way takes time. And most HEM services, if they're offering fellowships or offering jobs out, will list their person spec online. You can find it. East Anglian have their person spec published because we recruit every 6 to 12 months. So our jobs are out there all the time. Look at the person spec, and it doesn't matter if you're a final year medical student. Look at the person spec now and start planning. Do your gap analysis. What have I got? What haven't I got? What do I need to do to achieve those criteria? And you've got to get every essential because there's no point applying without the essentials, right? But if you've got all the essentials, then you need to look at the desirables and say, well, how can I meet those desirables? Do I need to do a course or do I need to do some volunteering? Do I need to go away and spend some time doing something a bit strange with somebody else? Start like as soon as you know that's what you want to do because it takes ages to get to that point. So to put it in context, I qualified as a doctor in 2007. I got my HEMS job in 2019, started it in 2020. So a long time between graduating and getting to that point where I wanted to be. But those years in between were all about honing my application. So doing a MEMS course and doing the diploma in immediate medical care, carrying on with St John and getting some ambulance service experience under my belt, doing the basic stuff, doing the all those little courses, all that experience that when it came to applying, my application was good, got me to interview where I can talk about myself and talk about what my experiences are. So start now. If that's what you want to do, you start now. And likewise, if you're a sixth former who wants to do medicine, start now. You need to plan ahead and look at what are they looking for. How can I be that person that they're looking for? What do I need to do? How do I make myself stand out from other guys who are also applying? Start early.
Thank you so much, Mark. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. Is there any social media that you want to plug, or where can people find to follow you?
So I'm on Instagram. I'm sure you can link it to the
I
blog
will
post
do.
that goes with it. That's generally where I am. I post loads of interesting pictures of helicopters and scenes of a pre-hospital nature, horses jumping over stuff.
No worries. Thank you so much, Mark, and I'm sure to speak to you very soon.